good morning, everyone. Again, to another episode. Today we have Navid Nazemian, co-author, bestseller, and ex-executive, wonderful career in HR. So, Navid, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Julio. I am super stoked to have this conversation with you and share what I have learned over the years with your audience.
Thank you so much. So, Navid, for people to understand, who is Navid Nazemian? I mean, how you characterize yourself, telling other people, who are you? How did you got here? How was your career and your most insights?
Wow, that's a big question. So I'm a father, a husband, a former HR executive, and a published author and an executive coach. So those would be the attributes I would use to describe myself to someone who hasn't met me before.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Navid, how did all this started? I mean, did you had already in mind when you were a child, to get where you are, or this is something that appeared during your professional journey?
Oh, wow. So if I wanted to go back to the origin story, and obviously this is something that my parents have shared with me when they asked me when I was 3 years old or so,
Sure.
what is your dream job? What would you like to be one day? I couldn't quite decide between three different jobs. The first one was a lorry driver because I like to drive the biggest car possible. The
Okay.
second one was a construction worker because I like to play with sand. And the third one was a pilot because I also like to fly around. Now,
Amazing.
obviously, my career didn't quite work out in the same way, but it's
Okay.
interesting because, if you think of any of those jobs, they could not be any different than each other, than from one another. And so that's why I think, and in the early years, you're still trying to figure out the world. You're trying to understand what works, what doesn't. And to be perfectly honest, even when I was 18 or 20, I wasn't entirely sure what exactly is it that I want to do. So I
Sure.
kind of found my passion more by discovery than a strategic plan that I laid out 10 years ago or 20 years
Yeah.
ago. And I followed it step by step, as we speak.
Wonderful, wonderful. And tell us a bit about your career. I mean, you engaged a lot. Obviously, in some point in time, you made a change that you wanted to change the way people have the thought and how people master their changes. Um, I mean, what was the reaction, or what actually happened for you to make that decision and start doing it in such way? And of course we'll go over just after your book.
Sure. So first thing, I when I started in the wonderful world of work, I started in the sales function, and I did that for about 6 years. And I
Sure.
think if there is one theme that I can point out to as someone who has spent 26 years in working for large organizations,
Yeah.
is the fact that I have always been open enough and passionate about to follow my passion,
Sure.
rather than doing what seems right or what has been recommended to me as a result. Which
Yeah.
also means that 6 years into my sales positions, and I did two jobs in those 6 years, I discovered my passion for the people function, for the HR function. And at the time, Julio, nobody wanted to hire me because every time I applied for an entry level HR position, either I got a rejection letter sent to me right away, or if they were kind enough, they would ring me up and say, "Hey, we got this, application of yours. We have amazing opportunities in the sales department. Would you be interested to explore them?" And I had to explain to them that no, this is a conscious choice. I want to move from sales to HR, and I don't see any contradiction by doing that because, again, at the time and still today, a lot of HR people are missing the commercial experience that people do have in sales and in finance and some of the other functions. So
Absolutely.
it took only one person, as Eminem says, one chance, one opportunity, and that lady, her name is Dania Frech. She was my first HR boss.
Okay.
She took a chance with me. She said, "Okay," and she was the head of HR at Adidas at the time. She said, "I'm going to take a bit of a risk with you, just to be perfectly clear." Because you're the only HR person I'm hiring into an HR position that has zero HR experience whatsoever. And the way I'm going to justify that in the company is by saying that you're the only person that doesn't have the experience, but you happen to be the only person that's actually sold our products before. So you have the customer experience, you have the product sales experience, you just don't have the HR experience. And the rest is history, as we say. So I spent 20 wonderful years working in the HR function. I
Yeah.
moved from Adidas to GE, to BAT, to Roche, one of the top 5 pharmaceutical companies. And the last 8 years of my corporate career, I spent with a wonderful company called Vodafone, which is a
Yeah.
telecommunication and technology company. So that's been kind of my 20-year trajectory working in the HR function. And I've done that in 5 different countries.
Wonderful. That's amazing career, Naveen. Congratulations. One of the things that you mentioned that in HR it's missing today. One of the things is actually the reading compliance, because most of the times HR people read the requirements, but then they don't match it with the profile CV most of the times, and they just come up with something similar, right? And when you're talking about when contracting proposals, things like that, and they send you something that sometimes it's really out of scope from what it is exactly that is the actual requirement. So within this, also, what changes have you seen in HR during the last 10 years? Obviously, there was some changes, some good, some bad. What was for you the most insightful, and what was the most compelling that you add on your experience into that sector? Um, Navid, did you hear me?
Julio, you just broke out when you said what changes, and then you cut off.
Oh,
So if
I'm
you want
very
to repeat
sorry.
that
There
question.
must be the
Yes.
internet. So sorry about that. So, no, I was adding in what changes did you manage to see during this stage of your journey in HR,
Sure.
and what you add in into that sector that was you saw that it didn't exist and you
Yeah.
completed instead successfully.
Yeah. I think one of the huge advantages that HR leaders have, and it's a bit similar to finance leaders and probably also applies to IT leaders, is that we can change industries rather easily. Whereas if you are a salesperson or a marketing person, you may or may not have the same ease of changing the industry just like that. And so I actually spent, the 26 years I spoke about earlier, working for 7 different industries. And of course, every industry is unique. And within the industry, every company truly believes that they are truly unique in their own way. And
Yeah,
that is true. But what's also true is you can always share best practices across industries if you work in an enabling and a support function like the HR function. So yes, whilst I worked for the fast-moving consumer goods industry, and that was the 6 years I spent with the wonderful company named BAT, they had their own ways of doing things, and they had their own beliefs around talent management and succession planning and so on. But that didn't mean that they could learn a thing or two from my previous time at GE or from previous times at Adidas. And so this is one of the unique things that HR leaders can bring to the table, which is, let me understand this organization and this industry. And now let me go back and look at the various experiences I have and what from those experiences is actually applicable to this industry that may be proving to be a game changer. Because guess what? If you work for a pharmaceutical company, chances are that all the pharma companies are pretty much doing the same thing. And
Yeah.
so, if there is an outside in view provided to that organization, that actually may turn to become your leading edge or competitive advantage over the others.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And with all this, you wrote a book about mastering changes. Tell us a bit how you came up with that, and how did you got to write a book that was actually #1 bestseller?
Yes. So, my book is titled Mastering Executive Transitions, The Definitive Guide. And the idea of writing a book was something that, had been lingering in my mind for a long time. And to be perfectly honest, I couldn't really find the perfect time to have enough kind of leeway to, write this wonderful book, which is one of the reasons it took me 7 years to finish it. From start to finish, it was a 7 year journey. And, a few years into the writing, I wasn't entirely sure if I would actually manage to finish it because it was a lot
Sure.
harder than what I imagined it to be. So I have the highest levels of respect for anyone that isn't a published author and just that, but is doing something else as a main gig and is trying to write a book on the side. But that being aside, I think that the idea of writing a book was early lingering, but I wasn't entirely sure what is the topic. And again, I wish I was that strategically foresighted 10 years ago to say, I'm going to pick this topic. It's essentially a topic that's very rarely written about.
Right.
And I'm going to occupy that space. That's going to become a #1 international bestseller. And that's going to, give me a lifeline after my corporate tenure. I had no idea, Julio. That's the honest answer. So
Yeah.
I really wrote about the topic that I felt very passionate about. I didn't do an incredible amount of research to find out what other books have been written in this field and so on. But obviously, of course, when I started to do the research, I realized that it's a topic that is essentially unoccupied. And
Yeah.
so, the other book at the time my book launched, which was roughly 3 years ago, the only other very popular book in the same category of books is called The First 90 Days. And it's 21 years old by now. It's very dated. And it's a very simplistic American way of looking at onboarding. Whereas
Yeah.
my book looks at the topic through the lens of an executive leader, which is
Right.
fundamentally different than The First 90 Days, which is a cookie cutter approach to onboard yourself, more structured in a more structured way. My book talks about, the double diamond framework of executive transitions, which is a 12 to 18 months journey. And
Right.
that framework consists of 7 different phases, of which only one is the first 90 days. So that should give you an idea around how
Yeah.
insufficient a first 90-day approach is to anyone that is at the top of a house and tasked with leading the organization into the future at the C level. And so that's just some ideas around how I kind of, found my topic
Sure.
and my passion. And really, I think I still have no answer to give to you as to how it became an international bestseller, how it became a #1 new release. But I think it's got to do with a few things. The first one is it was a topic that was not written about at the time my book launched. So that was a good thing to do. The second thing is people that are much more famous than I will ever be. These are Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, Professor Dave Ulrich, CEO of Vodafone Germany at the time, Hannes Ametsreiter, many other gurus said very good things about my book. I think it helped the credibility of my book that I'm not the only person who thinks that it's a decent book, but there are people that have a thing to say to the wider world that say that this is an amazing book. And the combination of the book, launching at a time where there was very little written about the topic, I think these are just some ideas I have today that made my book the successful book that it is today.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, you name some things that actually are the most the most important, which is not only, the first 90 days when you come in, is the, all the other matters that once you are in the position, what is it that you needed to do during those stages for you to be a known executive leader inside the corporation? It takes a lot, it's a lot of stages. And of course, we've been through that, and we know it's not about what you learn on the outside. The reality is much, much different. And bigger the corporation, bigger the pressure, bigger the stress. Can you go through a bit about these stages from your point of view yourself? Then I'll share mine too.
Sure. So if you wanted to look at the 7 phases, and it's an interesting one, because if I look at the 7 phases, the one phase that is very rarely written about, and it has to do with the success of the first 90 days. Everyone speaks about the first 90 days, and that's all they do. Is another very great book that I came across, which is called Before Onboarding, and it's being written by a gentleman called Michael Burrows. He used to be a search firm partner, so he was a headhunter for a living. And he reached out to me at the time and said, I got the manuscript of my book. Would you be kind enough to read it, give me feedback, and so on, which is what I did. And, his book speaks about the fact that every executive leader can start to onboard themselves before actually starting in the position, which is counterintuitive to the idea of the first 90 days. So that is the first phase of my 7-phase framework, the Double Diamond framework. And that phase is called Discover. So this is your minus 90 to day 0. It is beyond me, Julio, why any executive must sit on their hands, patiently wait for day 1 to start to onboard themselves, successfully. There are very concrete things that anyone can do before actually starting formally in the position. So that's the first thing. These are things you can do, such as educating yourself about the organization, educating yourself about the culture, the context, the networks of power and decision making in the organization. And so there are very concrete things that anyone can do before starting officially in the new role. That then brings us into phase 2, that is called Immerse, which is the first 90 days. This is your typical first 90 days. This is when you are being a fly on the wall, where you are learning more about the organization, seeing from the inside out, what is it to really be in the position? What are the real challenges? What are the real opportunities? And getting to know your stakeholders, establishing yourself in the position. That then brings us to phase 3, which I have named Adapt. So the Adapt phase is your, month 4, in the role. So this is your day 91 to 120, where you need to start to adapt yourself to the organizational culture, to the existing leadership DNA, and everything else that makes this organization great. And this is your opportunity to start to embed some of your previous learnings, some of your previous experiences into the role, whilst being, a good citizen of this new organization. That then brings us to phase 4, which I call Mobilize. This is your months 4 to 6 into the role. This is where you will need to start, and this is very common at the executive level when you're being brought into a role, or a new company for that matter. You are being mandated with a big transformation, with a big change initiative, or big something that you are asked to do. And so this is your opportunity to start to work from within this system, to align stakeholders, to convince them of the business case for change, and make the change for change a very visible and tangible vision that everyone starts to buy into. That then brings us into phase 5, which I have named Operate, which is your month 6 to 9 in the executive role. This is where you need to start to, make things happen. When you need to start to, if you are doing a reorg or a transformation program, this is where you need to start to bring some of that horsepower on the road to demonstrate to the organization that this is serious and we are going to do that. which then brings us to phase 6, which I have named Nourish. This is your months 9 to 12. And this is a very crucial stage in the executive life cycle, because this is where the first fruition of the change and transformation you are supposed to bring about will need to start to materialize. This is where everyone will start to believe that whatever you have been, selling and sharing with them is actually coming to fruition now. And so the story I use in my book is Hannes Ametsreiter, when he was appointed CEO of Vodafone Germany. Vodafone Germany had been a declining business for 12 consecutive quarters in a row before he was appointed.
Right.
And of course, the first 6 to 9 months, he was trying to convince every employee that this is the new direction. This is what's going to get us out of the rut into the growth phase. And of course, the very first quarter, where the market share and the profitability and the revenue didn't decline but started to grow, was what he needed to get the full buy-in of the organization, so that they really truly believe that whatever he is bringing about in terms of change and transformation actually is going to result into a better future. And that then brings us into the 7th and last phase of the Double Diamond framework, which I named Develop. And the first phase, Julio, and the 7th phase are the ones I skipped most often. And the 7th phase is named Develop for a reason. This is when the executive and myself, or whoever's the coach of the executive, are going to sit down and review the entire last 12 to 18 months to look at and reflect upon the following. What were some of the things that I intended to bring about in terms of change and transformation that I succeeded? What helped with, making the changes happen? What did I aim to change but didn't succeed for whatever reason? What were the reasons for failure? And more importantly, if I were to go into a future transition at a future date, what are some of the learnings, 2 or 3 learnings that I might apply going forward that I will now embody as an established experience as an executive? And so, because I will never quite remember anything more than 3 things, Julio, if you were to take the first letter of each of the 7 phases, you will get to the word diamond. And that's how the whole thing becomes a story. And that's just speaking about the 7 phases of the Double Diamond framework.
Absolutely extraordinary. There's definite insights there. I definitely recommend anyone to go through it, which are fundamental for the reality of a transition. For most people who are out there and still don't have that much experience in executive level, it's not about necessary. It's about being critical to know. Because you come to a stage when you get into your position, people are looking at you, making sure that you do what you're supposed to be doing. And they are waiting for you to make those decisions, because that's what you're there for. And this is when you actually starting to encounter, not everywhere, of course, but in some situations, it happens. It happens, for example, for people who are coming in and then they are unable to adapt. For people who have their own mindset and want the organization totally to adapt, and sometimes it does not work the same way because for many complex reasons, and the auto improvisation sometimes. You need to have this skill in these days for you in order to be able to be successful, because you're gonna encounter situations every day, and most of them you haven't encountered before, and you need to make a decision on those. So it's about putting your experience into something that you're able to adapt in that specific moment and move forward, and also to adapt the culture and the environment of the organization where you are. Because I saw this in 2 organizations that the person came in he couldn't adapt to the actual culture of the organization. He wanted to make the change when the actual problem was that he was unable to adapt to that culture because his culture was totally different from where he's coming from. And sometimes this happens. So that's what I wanted to focus is that it's not about only bringing the knowledge, but the person that comes in has to have some skills, which one of them definitely is humility. The person have to be humbled. He needs to know how to come in and be able to adapt himself inside a culture that already existed for many years. Of course, there's some sledges that, of course, needs improvement, but you cannot come in and change the whole organization or the culture or, what it's been doing for 10, 20 years, right? Everything needs an improvement, yes, but you also need to adapt and be able to people to understand you what is the improvement. Because imagine I come into organization, you are part of the organization, and I tell you something totally different what you've been doing from 20 years, but totally radical. And I don't even trying to understand you, your point of view, or not even trying to understand your skills or the way you've been working. And this, unfortunately, in sometimes it happens, and that's why you feel the clash on the results of each Q on the organization. People today, it's fundamental to understand each other, especially in the executive level. When you are on a board, you all need to understand each other. We all need to go on the same road. We all need to go to have the same spotlight saying that's the direction where we're going, and this is the timeline, and this is the stages where we need to do to develop this program or whatever solution or whatever transition you need to do in order to get there. If there isn't adaptation from the people on that board and everyone is not aligned with that, whatever that is, it will never work. And this has been my experience in two organizations that is very, very struggling, especially for people then in the lower level, especially intermediate from PMO to to lower, because they need to characterize what is the command, and they need to put in a timeline and a program scheduling involving sometimes thousands of people. And if it's not clear, that's when you see the capabilities of the project director or project manager. I saw incredible things in this stage because the directions were not clear and they were still able to perform, trying to understand how the management, was wanting to perform, but they didn't. And then there was some meetings after 9, 10 months saying, listen, you understand that these are the results, but you do understand that we had no clarity from where we got to. I mean, we understood what was the perception, but the order was not clear how to get there. So, and this is very, very, very important because it's not about just thinking to yourself, having the knowledge to yourself. You need to be able to explain yourself to others, for people to understand what is your point of view and what are you trying to achieve. And also, you also need to understand the culture and the knowledge and the skills of everyone else that's working with you. And this is something I faced in one of the organizations, that it was one person. The person he was giving command, and everyone else needed to obey. They didn't care about the skills or the performance. He only needed the results, and everyone needed to understand him, not him to understand anyone. So, and this faced a big clash too. So, what I'm trying to get into the conclusion is that there has to be an understanding from everyone that's leading the command, because it's not about, I want to do this, yes, but you need to know how to explain to people how to do that. They need to understand your vision in order for the company and the group and this transition to be successful in order to get there, right? So yeah, I mean, I think definitely those are very, very impactful and needed insights inside this sector, because for some people they need to understand them, and also to be a better version of yourself. Because if everyone understands you and knows what is your goals, and you understand each other, you know how to hear, because knowing how to hear is very fundamental also. It's about hearing, understanding, and understanding the other person's skills to make sure that these skills are properly managed inside the organization, right? That was a bit your experience within this. How did you, when you manage HR, what was the most fundamental that you see putting the right skills in the right position?
Yes, I mean, it's a big topic, right? And you're talking about a topic that is top of mind for HR leaders and has been for years and will be for years to come.
Yes.
I mean, the key word is strategic workforce management, which means you essentially do an exercise where you look 3 to 5 years out and think about the skills that the organization needs in order to succeed, and then translate it back to today and look at the current skill set that you have available in the organization. And the delta of the two is going to be your roadmap to either build the skills you need, and there's going to be a combination of all the B's. You may be needing to buy some of those skills, meaning you need new people, new leaders, new capability that you build, buy into the organization. You may need to borrow some of that, because you can't, if you don't have the scale and the size of an organization, you may not be able to buy those leaders into the company, but you may be able to borrow them in form of interim managers and project executives who are not interested to join a company, but they are happy to give away their skills and build succession from within the organization. And so whatever it is you need to do, but these are very, very important things to do. And of course, every company that I have worked for, I think Vodafone being the last one, where our group CEO, said in one of the all hands that Vodafone doesn't want to become the best telecommunication company, but he expects us to become the best tech company in the world, which suddenly meant that we are starting to look at the Meta, the Alphabets, and the Apples and Microsofts, rather than the Orange, the Deutsche Telekom, and the typical players, the O2s of this world. Yeah,
absolutely. So there you have it. I mean, there was adaptability and a change in the vision for everyone to understand, right? That's a very clear step needed in any especially big organization, because the workflows are much bigger, the timelines are much bigger groups. We're talking about several thousands of people coming around the world, and everyone needs to understand this proper transition in order to be successful. It's the most critical thing. So, Navid, regarding your over 26 years of experience, what you still see that HR could improve, let's just say, for now and for future?
Sure. So if I wanted to be a little more specific and focus on this particular process, so because there's a gazillion things that HR and finance and all the leaders can improve on any given moment. There are 3 activities that most HR people and most HR leaders and functions get right. The first one is, if an executive is joining the company, to look after the admin part of that, making sure that they have everything they need. On day one, there is a working, system, laptop, access to the whatever portal software they need, access to the building and all that. The second one is a business orientation of some kind, which again is perfect if you think about the wider population in an organization. The vast majority of population will be non-executive, and they need to have some sort of a business orientation, business induction type training. And the third one is the legal and procedural formalities, making sure Vodafone being among those companies, which, telecommunication is considered critical industry for most countries in the world. There's some background checks and screening and all that going on before someone actually joins. So these activities are done by 8.5 to 9 out of 10 companies and HR functions, right? But as soon, Julio, as we start to move into what I call the higher value activities, the numbers start to drop to 5 out of 10 or 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
And the first one is aligning expectations with teams and bosses. Meaning, if I'm the new CFO, right, have my expectations been fully aligned with the CEO and the finance leadership team? This is something HR can help with. This is something HR can help facilitate as a process to make sure that the incoming CFO really is fully aligned with his or her boss. And at the same time, that alignment is also done with the inherited leadership team that they will inherit as a finance leader. So that's the first thing. The second thing is organizing meaningful meetings with key stakeholders. And by that, I mean not booking some random meetings with random numbers of stakeholders, but really being strategic about to say, okay, if we are Vodafone Group and we are headquartered out of London and we serve, 24 different markets internationally, if I'm the incoming group CFO, what will be the most meaningful sets of stakeholders for me to meet with and have alignment and informative sessions with? So that means that someone in HR typically needs to sit down and map the stakeholder universe to say, for the CFO, for the CHRO, for the CEO, for the CTO, and so on, what are the most meaningful stakeholders to be meeting with, and in what cadence and what rhythm and what kind of order of magnitude. And the third and probably most important higher value activity that is very rarely done in most organizations that I have seen is to coming back to what you said earlier, which is making sure that there is the cultural and leadership familiarization done at the executive level. Meaning, if I'm new to this organization, which happens roughly 50% of the time, it's likely that the C-level leader will be hired from the outside, and roughly the other 50% is promoted from within. That I have a true and deep, meaningful understanding of what it's like to work for a company such as Vodafone at the group level. What is the culture like? What is the organizational DNA? What is the fabric of leadership in this company? What does great leadership look like here? And that may or may not be the same understanding that I had of leadership in my other company down here that I, grew up and spent 10 wonderful years working for. So it's those higher value activities that will leverage the executive's performance rather than getting the basics right, which essentially works for 99% of the workforce and the overall population of an organization. So that will be my tips in terms of working on the process. Now, there are other things that also help with the executive success. One of them is to hire someone like myself, and there are many other transition coaches out there who just do this and nothing else. Meaning, if you were to be appointed CEO of Vodafone Group, I will work with you for the next 12 months to come to really make sure that your transition as an incoming CEO is maximized, that the derailment risk is reduced at the same time. And of course, working with a comprehensive framework such as the Double Diamond framework. We only touch upon the 7 phases. There's many more detail to that particular framework. But you have what you need in order to hit the ground running and succeeding, rather than hit the ground and having to figure everything out on your own. So those are just some top tips that I can share with you in the limited time we have today to
Yeah,
share with
yeah, of
the
course.
audience.
Yeah, 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 of course. No, absolutely, absolutely. You came exactly to the spot on point, which are the most critical kind of to go in and to know, of course, inside the organization, that people don't really go through them. And they are the most critical for a total understanding from both sides, wherever you are and whatever you want to do, of course. So, Navid, so how do you see yourself within the next 5 years? I mean, you're going to continue doing what you're doing. You're thinking I'm doing, other things also apart from what you're doing. Tell us a bit about what are your thoughts?
Sure. I mean, I find, and I have to, touch wood by saying that I'm really in my sweet spot. I get to
Right.
do the kind of work that I love doing. I get to work with clients that I love working for and working with. And I really feel that I'm in a good place right now. So if it's down to me, I wouldn't want to change a single thing for the next 20 years to come. But the reality is, if I look at the total time that I have available and how I'm spending this time, roughly 80% of my total time is spent on coaching, of which 80% is executive transition coaching, and the other 20% is working with entire leadership teams to take them from good to great. This is
Sure.
something that I have helped many outstanding leadership teams to do. And the other 20% of my total time is spent on doing things like this, speaking to wonderful people like yourself, either on podcasts, at conferences or webinars, speaking about this important topic and
Yeah.
helping to educate wider audiences and immerse themselves into the topic. And that's all I do. I don't do anything else. I don't do trainings. I don't do facilitation. I don't do anything else that distracts me from doing the core work. And I love
Of
doing
what you
that.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel incredibly grateful to be able to do that.
Amazing. Amazing. I can tell you that for me, I feel that you are an extraordinary person. You have a wonderful career in understanding HR. It's really needed out there to have people like you, especially in big organizations, and especially for the nature of understanding culture inside organizations, because in current days, the reality is most people don't feel as part of the organization, they feel as objects inside of our organization. And of course, with people like you, these transitions or changing the organization and its culture, it's definitely needed to achieve better results. I just say from my own experience and opinion, just a thought, which is a paragraph that I send to all executives out there. If you see that everyone feels that they are where they're supposed to be doing and where they feel that they are, wouldn't be better that they feel good doing what they're doing where they are? Imagine from yourself, if you're doing something that you really enjoy and like and really feel doing it, wouldn't you have better results than instead just doing it because you were doing as automated process or automated machine? So I just leave that motion there for everyone to think about, because it's critical in this stage in any organization, according to times and how society is going, because you have to see what is happening from the outside too. For example, you call into organization and sometimes you wait 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then you get to a stage that you don't know if you're still gonna be on the phone hanging up more to wait, or not. And then you find out that even waiting and talking with the person, you still haven't resolved what you're supposed to resolve. And then you see the clock on your phone, and you've been there 45 minutes to 1 hour, and you didn't resolve anything. Why does this happen? I just leave it there for everyone to think about. And I can tell you from my opinion what's going on when I have this result. Firstly, the person is not feeling his proper environment inside that organization. He doesn't have proper directives or implemented proper directives in culture for him to be able to perform and give that transparent communication with customers to the outside. It's three phases. I call it these three phases that is needed to do when something like this is happening. And this is happening because most organizations think about how do we make the most of it and not caring about quality of service and everything else. This is reality. I'm not talking about something extraordinary. You can see major organizations in these days. You can see the performance and the quality performance. You can see most of the KPIs, and you can see it's so public knowledge. I mean, how can that change? Well, you can change that putting the proper people in the proper place and treat them well. That's the main trick, right? I mean, what's your opinion about that? Just to close this topic.
Yes, I think I'm not sure. Was it Sir Richard Branson who said, treat your employees well, and they will take care of the business on your behalf. So I think there's very, very, much truth and wisdom in that. And and I wanted to thank you again for the time we had today. I wanted to say thank you for providing me with this opportunity to speak to your audience. I hope that they enjoyed what they saw and what they will be listening to. And if I may, I would also love to, provide a small gift, which is a free sample of my book. So that's for anyone in your wider network that sends me a WhatsApp message or a LinkedIn message and says, hey, I enjoyed this conversation. It's my free gift for you. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity, Julio. And I hope that this was what you had in mind when you reached out to have a conversation.
I appreciate it very much, your insights and your sharing knowledge in the episode today. I'm pretty sure it will help give a lot of the audience a better insights what is exactly a transition and what exactly needs to be able to have an understanding inside HR in any organization. So, Navid, before we go, I always ask all my guests to say a power message. What will be your power message today?
Wow. And what's the definition of a power message if I were to ask you?
So a power message, it's like a definition of uplifting people, and what are the main characterization regarding a resume of the conversation today. What will be the most impactful thing that people need to understand all in paragraph power message?
All right. Okay. So the way I would like to phrase this is that my passion lies in supporting executives during critical career transitions. And I'm always inspired by their courage to deliver value to the organization while staying true to their authentic selves. And my hope for you as an executive leader is that you don't do it on your own, but you reach out to someone like myself or other people who can help you to be at your best and really going through this with ease and grace. So that will be my final message for you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So everyone, like Navid has offered, we thank you for this. On all posts of me and David, we're gonna post also a link on of the episode Navid's book, free sample that he wants to offer for everyone who wants to read and goes into our episode and on all information. It will be there during today. And all episode was going to be in all platforms, so anyone can see it in any moment, anywhere. So we are in all platforms, so it's going to be very easy to read it or hear it anywhere. So, Navid, again, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure. Very insightful, was very powerful. I think it was very needed inside this sector to know more and for people to understand a bit more of what you do and what it's needed to be done inside any organization. So thank you for those insights. I was really thrilled going through them because it's something that I wanted for a long time to hear about it. And it's very needed. I will definitely recommend anyone out there to get in touch with you. So, Navid, how does people get in touch with you? What is the best way?
Sure. The best way to get in touch with me is through LinkedIn. It's my really main social media platform. I'm actually quite friendly, so if people send me connection invites or requests, I usually accept them. And I'm also answering all the messages, so I don't have a VA or anything like that. I'm a very small business in the end, and I am very grateful for any meaningful connection and message.
Here we go. So there we are. So you can reach him on LinkedIn, and I do advise for you to reach him. If you are in looking for a transition, or if you're looking at a new position in any organization, I would advise anyone to reach you and to get your insights for a better preparation into getting the goals and the alignment that the person wants to achieve. Navid, thank you so much for your time today. It was really a pleasure. I look forward maybe cooperating you, in the near future in some point. I do recommend your insights, and thanks for all your insights today and your time here today in the show. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julio.
So that was all for today. Catch you all on the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this one. Catch you all soon. Thank you all for today. Thank you.